This is good evening, good evening. This is Lady Estelle and the Street Soldier crew, and we are delighted to see and meet with you another Sunday evening. Your host this evening is glad to see that we are still here. We are safe, we are alive and free. Who is your host? Dr. Joseph E. Marshall Jr.
Good evening, street soldiers everywhere, wherever you are. I use that one. From yeah, I'm ready. I'm just trying to get everything moving properly. We got a great show for you tonight. Serious report came out this week on gun violence. We're gonna just jump right into it. Have some conversations with the people in the business because what do we do here? We try to get people alive, unharmed by violence, and free from incarceration. So we got to do it. We got to do it. Back to our roots. That's where we start. That's what we try and do every day. Gotta say hello to everybody. Hello to Lady E, our co-host, my co-host. Hello to Ann. Hello to Philmo, Mike. And the soul is drifting somewhere. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, boy. I don't know what it is, man. On time. Coach what the coach used to say, Lady E. What he used to say, Ann? He said to be on time is to be late, right? To be early is to be on time, and to be late is to like you've never been there at all. That's what Coach Wilbur Jiggins, the elder of the Alive and Free Omega Boys Club, had to say. So y'all want to say hello real quick? We got a lot to cover tonight. A lot to cover tonight. All right.
I know people had a good time this weekend celebrating Pride in San Francisco and all over the Bay Area. No, I know it because the traffic was thick. But yes, happy Pride, everyone.
Yeah.
Wow. I missed that drive over during Pride.
Hey.
Yeah.
I never look at the street closures first, right? So I'm just driving. I say, damn, Pride Week, right? So I'm in the middle of it. And she used to know, she used to ride me. I just pushed through. No, this time, Lady E, I turned around, came all the way back.
Usually, I'll say, Dr. Marshall, it'd probably be better if you do such and such a thing.
And what do I
he says, oh, no, it'll be fine.
You right about that.
No. It should be no problem by this time. All right, Dr. Marshall. Well, lo and behold, we end up having to go right back where we started and do like it was suggested.
I heard your voice. You wasn't here, but I did not try to just make it through. I turned around and came back and came through the mission. So you was right there with me. Okay.
You heard my voice.
I heard your voice.
Finally.
Just like the kids at the club. Hear your voice.
How long does it take, Lord?
Well, it might take a while, but long as I get it.
What do they say? All roads
some get it right away. No, what we say? What do we say? Some get it right away. Some get it sooner or later.
Yes, Lord.
I got it. I got it. All right. Listen, everybody said hello. Everybody said hello, right? Okay, we're good. I got to ask, you've been watching the Olympics. You watching the Olympics? I love the Olympics. I love the Olympic trials. I love that. Mike, you been watching the Olympics film with me?
Negative.
All right. Simone is amazing. America's sweetheart. I mean, Simone Biles is like, I mean, she going again. I don't know if the finals are on tonight. I don't know, but I know in the first round, she was just smoking way ahead of everybody else. Love Simone Biles. Lady, you been watching the Olympics?
I did see some of them. Yes. Okay.
Any names you want to throw out real quick?
No.
So, man, what's up? Been watching the trials, man?
Olympic watching trials? A little bit, see some triumph, some heartache. I always love to watch the sprints. That's my thing.
Oh yeah. Well, let's give it.
What's the brother's name? Is it Lyle?
Noah Lyles won the 100 and a 200.
Wow. Yeah, that brother can run.
And a 200. That brother is Sha'Carri Richardson. I think that's the same.
Sha'Carri.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Sha'Carri, forgive me.
Who is that?
Well, hey, that's why I got y'all. Okay, that's why I got y'all.
Okay.
Right. Sha'Carri, what? She qualified on one and she missed out on another one, right?
She won the 100 meters
Okay.
And depending, she's going back to Paris, trying to win the gold medal this time, and she did not qualify.
Yeah.
With Gabby Thomas. I mean, look, I love the sprints. I love it like you, man. I really love it like you. And a world record was broken by Sydney Laughlin. What's her last name? She had a married last name. Anyway, she's so close. She won the 400, broke her record again, 400-meter hurdles. Lavone, right? Again, and she's close to breaking 50 seconds in the 400 meters, which is amazing, man. I mean, that would be amazing if she can do that. So that's just some of the performers I watch it. I watch it as much as I can get. That's hard to find Peacock. Y'all don't have any Peacock? You got Peacock? Anybody got Peacock?
Get some cable.
Yeah.
I
have stock in Xfinity.
Okay. How much?
I had about 300 shares.
Oh man, you doing all right.
For real? Yeah, you ain't playing with us.
I had.
Oh, you had.
Yeah. I got like 75.
Can I say that Eden ran the 400 in
Your granddaughter?
112?
She ran the 400? That's right. You told me that. Tell everybody.
Eden ran the 400. She 112.
Ooh.
How old is she?
She's 9.
Oh, she running. Okay.
Man.
But she works out with her brothers.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Drew is trying to get his he ran it one time in 59.
Your grandkids might be in the Olympics pretty soon.
Right. Well, we never know how that's gonna turn out. But
you didn't know you didn't need all
the
these
oldest is trying to get under 59, and Reed, he and Eaton, he's probably like 105, I think, was his personal best.
They all of their ages, because I know them, but you say
Drew is 14.
Okay.
Reed is 13. And Eden is 9, going on 25.
Like you got some future Olympians, grandma. Grandma Gigi.
It's fun to watch.
Let's get to the news real quick. I guess the biggest news of the week was the debate between President Joe Biden and the other guy, and Donald Trump. And I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it because I was teaching the kids. But everybody says it was crazy. I mean,
how come you didn't watch it?
I was teaching the kids.
That's an excuse.
I would not say that it was crazy, but it was bad.
Oh, okay.
It was depressing.
Yeah.
I went in depressed. I came out more depressed. And honestly, Biden was bad.
Yeah, no, everybody say that.
He was bad.
I heard
Trump was kind of new.
I heard Biden was bad and Trump lied. That's all I heard. Biden bad.
Yeah,
Trump
but Trump, if there's anything, Trump can perform. He can get up and talk in front of people. That is, whether we like him or not, that is where he scores points. And Biden just was bad. So you couldn't help but thinking, dang, are we on the verge of Trump 2.0 after the end of that debate? So
yeah.
I think Jimmy Carter can still run. Not sure.
Jimmy
Carter. He's open for a second term.
I don't know. We'll see what happened. I mean, that's what I heard. I heard it was, people that even say it wasn't good either way. So it was horrible. So, we'll see. We'll see. All right. Onward and upward. And here's a nice news. Bronny James was drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers, making the LeBron James and Bronny James the first father-son duo to play on the same team and will be able to play together in the history.
They had him on Facebook with a picture of him holding Bronny when he was a baby. And then a picture of both of them in their Lakers jerseys. It was very cool.
That's crazy to play with your son. I mean, forget basketball. I'm talking about daddy and son. That is so cool. Yeah, and those of us who've been watching through the years have seen Bronny go from the infant, to now this 19.
Hey, all I know, LeBron better not do Bronny how you would have done me if we was on the same team.
Stop.
Okay. He better not on national TV in the middle of the game be like, Bronny, get your butt over here or something like that. No.
Let's celebrate the achievement. Okay. That is remarkable, amazing, wonderful, the whole bit. All right.
Oh, people were mad about it, and I love it. I love it so much.
Be mad about it.
I mean, it's obvious why they'd be mad about it.
Why?
He averaged 4 points a game in college.
But it's still 5. I ain't talking about that. I'm talking
about that.
Well, okay. You can draft who you want to
So,
draft.
first of all, you got to understand the context of things. Basketball, the NBA, is one of the hardest leagues to get into, right? So people talk about the nepotism of whatever, right? This isn't plumbing. This is competition. This is sports.
Well,
Less than 5,000 people, individuals in the world, have played in the National Basketball Association.
So you saying they shouldn't have drafted him?
If he didn't deserve to be drafted, he shouldn't have got drafted.
Well, if he done, he can draft who you want to draft. Okay.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
If he don't make it, he don't make it.
Todd Fuller got drafted. I'm a Warrior fan.
He don't make it.
They drafted Todd Fuller
Whatever.
for a favor.
He don't make it for a favor. I don't care if it's a favor or not. If you don't make it, I mean, who gonna lose?
It's not a Ken Griffey Jr. situation.
Well, to me, it is. I'm a daddy son. It's a daddy son thing for me.
Well, I'm not a dad.
I am. I am. Okay. Yeah.
It's a cute story, but we'll see what happens.
Beautiful story, man. It's a beautiful story.
Well, one of the things that they said, because you're not the only one, Mike, who has that same feeling, and people really wanted to know more about why the Lakers chose to draft him, given, everything that they know. And they talked about his level of maturity, his ability to be coached. They just said that the Lakers are looking for more than, it's not just what we think they need or want, but Bronny has what the Lakers desire to see and have in a professional basketball player. And so one that who can learn and grow and develop, and it's got, so yeah, that's
the high character guy. They do like him for that. Yeah.
He was selected for, so sometimes it's not just about making points, but having the ability to make points is important. But then there is more than that. And so when you have organizations that are really looking at character and the ability to grow, then hey, we are overdue for having character. We just talked about the debate. We got a felon. Somebody called them oxygenarians. Listen, so
oxygenarians.
Anyway, so yeah, it is remarkable and wonderful. And just the idea to look and see your son playing with his dad, knowing that journey. I mean, it's just wonderful. And to have the opportunity, we're not going to begrudge that. As African Americans, it's also overdue for us to, start supporting each other.
Hey, Lady E, LeBron didn't have a father in his life.
Hey,
and now he's taking his son everywhere with him. So I'm all for it.
And he's not just lifting up his son and being there for his son. He's also been there and supported so many other kids.
Well, that's a great point.
Lives and their journey.
They said, to wrap it up, Doc, they said LeBron has more assists. He might have more assists off the court than he does on the court.
All right, lady. Thank you for your perspective. We'll get you on ESPN.
I'm also reminiscent of the time when my dad had an opportunity to take over, and he didn't. He could have beat Jesse Owens running, but he didn't, because we then were supporting our people and not waiting for and looking for an opportunity to bring them down or point out. No, we celebrate. We need to start celebrating one another.
All right.
Those are just my thoughts and what I studied and read.
End of discussion.
I'm just saying.
All right, let's get into tonight's topic. Thank you, Lady E. Thank you, Lady. You notice Michael did not reply to you, but that's okay. Let's talk about what we're going
What
to
did
talk
he
about
say?
tonight. Nothing. I said he didn't reply to you. That's all. I got to get going. I got to get going with the show now. Gotta get going. Got a lot to cover. Oh my God. Now I got to find my notes. Where are they?
You're live on there.
I know.
No pressure.
The Surgeon General
Okay.
put out a report this week on gun violence. On gun violence and citing it as a public health problem and as a public health crisis. And so we're going to delve into that report tonight and see what we can do. If there's anything can be done, that anything can be done with the state of gun violence in America. To do that, we have joined once again by Garen Wintemute. Hope I said that right, Garen. And
You did?
We're going to get you and all your credentials and jump into this, but I want to tell the listeners, please, I need some answers. We need some answers. We need some conversation about what to do about gun violence. Can anything be done? What do you think are solutions? So you can give us a call at 877-955-1061 and tell us what you think can be done to prevent, to stop, to just make a dent in gun violence. And, Garen, before I just want to begin with a few notes I made about every shooting and how every shooting affects and impacts somebody. Locally, we had a shooting at a community basketball game, and a community elder, affectionately known as Little Rob, was shot, and he's gone. And it's all over, this area is feeling it heavy. Every shooting affects somebody. One of our kids we work with on Tuesday and Thursday night at the club, at his high school graduation, Skyline High. There was a shooting at graduation, there was a man killed and a child hurt. I got to read this one. At a Maryland high school during a Little League football game, right? You got to listen to this one, man. A man has died, a child is injured following a shooting at a Maryland Little League football game. The shooting happened at Potomac High School. About 11:30, the Little League game was being played. Two people were in the stands and got into a verbal altercation. It escalated, and one of the individuals took out a gun, firing at an adult male and a 5-year-old child. Now, if these were just like run-of-the-mill, hardly ever happen things, that's not true. And let me add one more, that we had a spate of, a series of mass shootings in several states a weekend ago. 1 dead and 34 wounded, as there were incidents in New York, Alabama, Missouri, and Ohio. They swelled the 2024 mass shooting tally. So this gun violence thing is bad. Yeah, well, summer's always hot. But what I think the interesting here about this, and Garen, you can jump in here, is we know it's been a violence problem, but they specifically labeling this a gun violence problem. Not a knife violence problem, not a, automobile violence problem, not a, whatever. It's a gun violence problem. In fact, many of the initiatives that have been going around, I know cities that have gotten funded specifically to fight gun violence. For you, Garen, and introduce yourself, and let's talk about what do you think is the significance of this report by the Surgeon General, specifically saying gun violence is a public health problem. And once again, if you've got solutions, give us a call, 877-955-1061, 877-955-1061. Go ahead, sir.
Fair enough. So good evening. Thanks for having me. To your audience, my name's Garen Wintemute. I'm an ER doc, an emergency medicine physician. I'm also a researcher. I've been studying firearm violence for more than 40 years now. I run a research center that does this. And as I was listening to those horrible stories, I was thinking about how all of us have been hearing and witnessing events like that since our childhoods, wherever we grew up. The smartest thing that was ever said about violence being a public health problem came from the head of CDC, Dr. David Satcher, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And he said to the New York Times, look, if violence isn't a health problem, then why are all these people dying from it?
Yeah.
It's just that simple. So to answer your question directly, what matters about this report is that the highest ranking health official, highest ranking physician in the country has said what we've all known and lived all along, but it matters when the person at the top says it, that this is a problem of a specific type, and why a public health problem, and why that matters is we have lots of experience in dealing with public health problems, and a lot of that experience is transferable to gun violence.
Hold on, yeah, we got a call. Anytime a call comes in, we're gonna stop and take it. Want to hear from you out there. How? What do we do to prevent, stop, slow down gun violence? What do you think is a solution? Thank you for calling. You're on Street Soldiers. Yes, thank you for calling. What's your name? You're on. I hear you. Yep. Nope. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think that's, God, unfortunately, that's a carry that just, it happens so often that, you know, you just, how many tears can you shed, right, Aaron? Wouldn't you say that people are becoming numb? Is that what you've seen?
That is not what I've seen.
Oh, okay.
People haven't given up. It's not that people don't care. It's how you framed the show. People aren't sure what to do. They don't know what works. And what they see is their friends, their neighbors, their loved ones dying or being injured around them, whether by homicide or suicide. They know that it touches them in their neighborhoods. A lot of people think it's not so much my problem because they think about homicide. But if you put it all together, more than half of adults in the United States have a direct personal experience with gun violence.
Wow.
It's everybody's problem. And again, to come back to this report, what this does is acknowledge that statement and frame an agenda for things to do.
How much does it take for something to be named a public health crisis? I mean, it seemed to me, like you said, it's obvious. Gun violence is killing folks like crazy, right? So why does it take so long? I mean, is it political? Is it the will of the people? Are they independent? I don't know if they're being influenced. Sure. Like you said, clear to me.
Yeah. So researchers were publishing articles calling gun violence a public health problem in the 1970s.
Wow.
It has taken us 50 years for the Surgeon General to call firearm violence a public health problem. I certainly don't blame our current Surgeon General. He's the guy who did it. But for 50 years, we haven't, at the policy level, been willing to acknowledge the obvious, because once you acknowledge the obvious, you have to do something about it, or one hopes you'll do something about it, which again is what the Surgeon General's report is trying to drum up some impetus for. I think you mentioned politics, and without question, politics has played a role in this not being acknowledged sooner.
I'm going to read just a little bit from the report. Gun violence has now become the leading cause of death among kids and teens. All right, according to the report, more than 4,600 deaths under the age of 19 were caused by gun violence, and 54% of all Americans, more than half, they have a relative or have experienced they or a relative have experienced a firearm-related incident. About 60% of Americans are worried about losing someone they care about. According to gun violence, the impact is sprawling, which we already know. I'm going to read them. Oh, here, this is the other part. The mental health reverberations are really quite profound. I know for years, people living in the inner city in the neighborhoods are saying, it's PTSD around here. We wake up to gunshots, go to bed with gunshots. We're going to funerals all the time. And you hear the word, just like in war, PTSD being thrown out there by those residents. Let's see when any studies and it just right. So what does this mean according to like what they're going to do, or is it just one of those pronouncements when you say certain steps can be taken because this is now declared a public health problem, and you also intimated, well, we know how to deal with public health problems, therefore we should, I would think, put some of these steps into place. And what possibly could some of those things be?
Yes.
Seem like, yeah.
Happy to respond.
I give you the easy questions, right?
Yeah. So let's start with the fact that firearms have become the leading cause of death for children and adults. That has happened for two reasons. I'm looking at the graph from the report as I speak to you.
Yes, sir.
One is that the rate of death from gun violence among children and youth has been going up for a decade. And that's a tragedy. But the main reason is that what was the number one cause of death, motor vehicle death, has plummeted. And that happened in large part because 60 years ago, we took on motor vehicle death as a public health problem, and we implemented a bunch of strategies. Some of them worked great, some of them didn't work so well. We had to evaluate to find that out. But 60 years later, motor vehicle deaths are a mere fraction of what they were. We deliberately chose, until now, not to take that approach with firearm violence, and we're paying the price. But let me switch. So as the Surgeon General makes the points that I've just made and said, so let's do something about it, one of the things that's right at the top of the list, and this is for homicide and in interpersonal violence more than suicide, is community-based violence interrupter programs or hospital-based violence interrupter programs. The idea, and those of us, whether it's me in a hospital or a person in a community who've worked with this, we know how it works. A lot of violence is retaliatory. A lot of violence arises from a relatively small number of people in any community. And if you know who those people are, and if you know who knows whom, it's possible, and this has been proven to be true, I'm not making it up, it's possible to interrupt the cycle of violence. We've been seeing success on this front for 30 years now, starting in Boston and then in Chicago, and now, frankly, all over the country.
Richmond,
and
California, right here. We can attest to it.
Totally, absolutely. Advanced Peace started in Richmond, which is not precisely the thing I'm talking about, but it sits right next to it. Mm-hmm. We know in general that identifying the people most at risk and doing something to reduce their risk works. It's true for homicide. It's true for infectious diseases. It's true for motor vehicles. It's the public health approach.
Yes. I'm gonna say yes, and yes to that. And maybe, in fact, a report like this will spur more of that. A couple of things come to my mind. In the work that I do, when I talk about, trying to stop violence, it seems that for a lot of people, violence is the way to solve a problem. Right? I've said that before. Right? Problem is where problem. You got an issue, it's violence, and right now, a preferred way, if not the first way, for some people, it's the first way. Right? Second way or third way, I'm tired of talking. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. You get the firearm and you shoot. What about I guess what I'm talking about is there, because this is the work that I do with dealing with people and their mindset, that you won't turn to violence as a way to solve your problem, right? Because it seems like even dealing with those who are doing the shooting or the active shooters and so forth, somebody's always becoming an active shooter, right? So if it is a purely a medical thing approach, then it would seem to be prevention, intervention, and rehabilitation. We should be trying to prevent people from thinking that this is a way to solve my problem. Now, and let me add to that. The big issue for me is, like I always tell people, you ain't worry about me. You ain't worry about getting shot by me, because no matter how mad I got, I ain't gonna shoot you because I ain't got no gun. So I might fight you, I might scream at you, but you ain't got to worry about me. In guns, to me, and I think we've talked about the biggest risk factor. The biggest risk factor from a pure risk factor standpoint, in gun violence, right? That's why it's called gun violence, right? It used to be that, what did we say? There are too many guns on the street. Remember that? We say too many guns on the street. Get some guns off the street. Now we flooding everybody with guns. It went from trying or thinking about that to the opposite now, where we're saying everybody. I mean, you can give anybody a gun now. And I was going to ask you about states, certain states, it's Texas and Arizona. And so if they're the biggest risk factor, it would seem to be the mindset is even more important. And I hope I'm making sense here, when everybody's got a gun, right? Now when I go, I got to worry about everybody. I got to worry about the little old lady down the street who got it for protection. I got to worry about I got to worry about everybody, because I don't know what's going on in their head. That seems the biggest issue for me.
So, couple thoughts.
Yeah. What? You can't hear it? Oh,
Hello?
There you go. Okay. Say it. Go ahead.
What do you have to say to people that, for the people that say guns don't kill people, stupid people with guns kill people?
Garen, you can take that one. I know what
I'll take that one. I'll take that one. So I've heard that statement in one form or another my entire career. Technology makes a difference. Americans we are not a uniquely violent society. If you look at our rates of interpersonal violence and you compare them to other wealthy industrialized countries, we're right in the middle. Plenty of them are higher than us. Mm-hmm. If you look at homicide, we are off the charts. The difference is not that we are more violent. It's that we have unique access to a technology that changes the outcome of violence. And Dr. Marshall, if I could go back to your point about people making first use of a gun, a question that I ask myself of people who do a lot of violence, and who, as you said, see violence as a way to solve problems. How many other ways to solve problems do they know about? What did they learn growing up at home? What did they learn in school? What did they learn from their peers? Did they learn how to negotiate? Did they learn how to walk away with your head held up? Or did they basically learn one way to solve a problem? So as you are doing and as others are doing, part of the approach is to teach people other ways to solve problems.
I was just doing the violence prevention training last week, right? And I posed that, and I said, we learned the violence is the way to solve our problems from the day we go to school. Because the first day you go to school, your parents tell you, if he hits you, hit him back. He doesn't say call home, call the teacher. I mean, a lot of parents, right? That's what they will say, right? And so you learn early, I think, to use violence is an out or a way to solve this issue that you're calling. That's just what we're taught, and it grows and grows and grows and more. I will say this: my growing up, and in a tough place to grow up, I always say South Central Los Angeles, I never went to a funeral of a peer, right? I never went to a funeral of a peer, you know. And I always ask the kids why, because I work with kids that have been going to 16 funerals in 16 years, right? You know, they got, you know, and I said, what's the difference? And they say, well, you know, and then finally they say, and I tell them, we didn't shoot nobody. The kids didn't have guns. Now the adults might have had guns, but the kids didn't have guns. In fact, there were a lot of fights. The issue was there. The anger was there. All the other risk factors were there. But, you know, we felt, you know, I always say we even felt it was unmanly if you couldn't fight. So, and I'm not saying fighting is good. I'm just saying people lived after the fight, right? I remember I saw my first gun. It was a 38. I was 16 years old when I started working with the kids. They had Uzis, 9mm, Glocks, you know, AK-47s. They had every kind of weapon of war that they could get to. And that's another thing to throw in here. Is not technology isn't a single shot 38. You know, it's something that can wipe out a whole battalion by itself. So, but you know, that we just didn't have them, and that's why we live. Now everybody's got a gun, and so you know that's the preferred or a preferred way for some people to deal with the issue. So the mindset is doubly important to me when everybody's walking around with the answer. You know, I got the answer. Keep messing with me. I'm not gonna say the other word I can't say on the radio. Keep messing with me. Keep messing with me. So it's gonna be tough to me. It's gonna be tough. By the way, let me say one other thing in this report. It also said, and I know this bothers you very much, half of all the firearm-related deaths in 2022 were due to suicide. Not just homicide, suicide. The preferred weapon when you're going to kill yourself is a gun. So, you know, I want to talk for a minute about this move to give everybody a gun now. And does that worry you? But Malcolm wants to jump in. 877-955-1061. If we got a call, we'll take that first. Looks like we got one. Let's go to that. Hi, you're on Street Soldiers. Go right ahead. Thank you for calling. You got any idea how to stop this gun violence?
Well, I got 2 points to make. You guys are talking about gun control and taking away the guns. I'm wondering, when you were dealing with the car situation and the cars being, you know, automobiles being the number one killer, did you take away the cars?
Well,
and the second point, my second point is,
let's talk about what they did do, okay? Because there was a way that they did, and Garen is writing this down. They didn't take away their cars, but they did do other things. So let's talk about those things they did first, and we'll get to your second question. That's a great one.
Okay.
Garen, you want to talk about that? This caller.
Sure. So very briefly, because I want to save time for a second point. Nobody on this show has mentioned taking away guns until you did. It's not part of my agenda. It's one of those areas on which gun owners and non-owners fundamentally disagree. I put my interest is on the interventions where gun owners and non-owners agree. And we'll get to that list, but let's get to your second point.
No, he wanted to hear what you did with cars.
Sure. Okay. So we license drivers. You have to have training to get a driver's license. You have to renew your driver's license. We changed the design of cars. When I was first working as an ER doc, somebody would come in a head-on collision, and I knew what kind of car they'd been driving if they were the driver, because the make of the car was tattooed on their chest. They'd been speared by the steering wheel. That does not happen anymore. We changed the design of cars. We changed the design of roads. We made it a lot harder to drive drunk. We did a bunch of things without taking anybody's cars away.
Not to mention seatbelts.
So thank you for that. We put seatbelts in cars and nobody used them. We required seatbelts to be used, and the people who didn't use them were the people who were already at highest risk for dying. So they kept dying. Old people, really young people, and intoxicated people. So what did we do? We put airbags in cars so that you were protected whether you were using your seatbelt or not. It's better to use both, but that's the genius of airbags. You don't have to comply, they just protect you.
and you have to wear a seat back under penalty of,
Yes, you do.
kind of penalty. So they didn't take away the car, but they changed the makeup of the car, so to speak, and licensed some other things and put some other things, policy things in motion. Is he still there for point number 2?
Yeah.
Let me hear number 2. I hope that gives
Well, number 2 was going to just, if you guys were talking about gun control, I was just going to point out that the cities that have the most gun control have the worst gun violence in them, like Chicago and various other places.
I was going to get to that. So thank you for bringing it up. I don't know if that's true. If it's not true, that's something that's up. Or states, So how true is that, sir? That's your job. That's what
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Gary.
see me smiling and jumping up and down at that one. Chicago's guns come from someplace else. It's just that simple. There's a ring of gun stores around Chicago, and there are trafficking pathways. One's from Indiana, one is from Mississippi. I have driven those pathways myself to watch the trafficking happen. But the guns come from someplace else. At the state level, and California is the poster child for this, it is really clear that having a robust regime of regulation on the purchasing and use of firearms makes a difference. California did that. Other states have. I will end with this observation. In 2021, the most recent year for which we have data, California, which did all of the things, had a firearm death rate, suicide and homicide together, as you mentioned, Dr. Marshall, suicide and homicide together, a firearm death rate that was 60%, 60%, lower than the average rate for the other 49 states. It's working.
Oh, and if I'm correct, and I know this because I know individuals that do it, they go to Nevada to get their guns.
I've watched it happen.
I know that 'cause I know dudes that went and got their guns from Nevada.
Yeah.
Cross border. So
go to a gun show in Nevada, and 30% of the cars in the parking lot are from California. I've counted. I've walked the parking lot.
Thank you for your call, sir. Thank you very much. Getting that insight. What is the argument against? And I'm still trying to get other than the fact that anybody can have whatever gun they want against AK-47s and Uzi and 9mm, and I mean there was a little victory when it came to bump stocks, right? Which we could make any gun into a automatic weapon, a machine gun. What is it there? This seems to be logical, that you don't want somebody walking around, with guns that could take out, a whole block. What's the argument there?
I'm going to defer. I think there's another caller coming in.
Is there a caller? Okay, Malcolm wants to jump in.
No caller. Just before you answer that question, that was, as I was listening to you talk, Doc, it's almost like the phrase gun violence it doesn't do enough in your mind, because gun, there's almost a picture that comes up when you say that word, but it's not assault weapon. You don't necessarily think large capacity weapon of war when you hear a gun, and so we're not, the guns is too simple almost of a term, because we're dealing with so much more under that umbrella. Does that make sense?
It does. So arguments against. One, it depends on who's making the argument, but one is, I don't agree with this, but it is an argument that's out there. The Second Amendment, in essence, allows anybody to own whatever kind of firearm they want to own, subject to restrictions that will all be litigated. But I think the important thing to put front and center is that firearms are consumer products, like motor vehicles, like anything else that we buy. There is an industry that makes them, that wants to maximize sales. They can't sell the same gun over and over to people, and guns last for a long time. You don't use them and throw them away. So they need to be able to diversify the product. So tired of conventional pistols, and we got tired of revolvers, so we moved to pistols. Tired of pistols, I know, let's have the civilian version of assault rifles. Ghost guns are sort of the latest, and where ghost guns are different is that there isn't an organized industry. But I suspect we'll see challenges to regulations on ghost guns. The point is, there will be pressure to make and sell every kind of gun you can think of, as long as there is money to be made in doing that.
So, one thing gives me hope, but doesn't give me hope, right? Doesn't give me hope. And this must have been an aberration. because the tobacco industry was making a whole bunch of money and it was killing folks. And somehow people said it is a it's a health issue. Health issue. I don't know how they did it. What was it about tobacco that they took on the money anyway and decided now you can't smoke in buildings? I'm not gonna say you're a pariah, but you certainly think twice. People will tell you don't smoke around me. People say you can have all the guns you want around me. You're not knowing the mindset. What was it about tobacco that they were able to do is that just like, what was it? That seems to be the singular thing that was a health issue that we took.
So, yeah, several things. Some are going to make people uncomfortable, but I don't think anybody will surprise any of them will surprise anybody. There was a lot of money to be made selling tobacco, but tobacco caused health effects across a broad population. And people didn't just die from smoking, they got sick from smoking, and they stayed sick for a long time before they died. And that's still happening. I see it all the time in the ED. They got cancer, they got lung disease. But the other thing is, the health effects of tobacco were spread broadly across the population. They were not concentrated in one segment of the population the way interpersonal violence is. And to get that kind of broadening for firearm violence, you have to include suicide, which is why I do. But we still don't even have a public conversation. We're starting to about suicide. But until we recognize that everybody knows somebody, everybody loves somebody who's at risk from dying from gun violence, there will still be plenty of people saying, not my problem. And then there's one other thing, and then I'll stop because I know I'm kind of on a roll. Have you ever heard of the National Smokers Association?
No.
No, you haven't. There wasn't the advocacy group that there is for gun ownership.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Wow. Okay, look, we're at the end of this first hour. We're coming back. We're gonna jump over to YouTube, everybody. You can tell my YouTube thing.
YouTube Live at Stay Alive and Free.
Okay, we got 3 more guests coming in. We'll continue this conversation. We'll be right back.
Tell me what you see when you look at me. Do you see another brother lost in these streets looking for his soul? Trying to find my soul. Or do you see another brother searching for lost souls in these streets? A street soldier. Street soldier. Here to help you get that chip off your shoulder, warm your colder days and sober your drunken ways, and find a way to help you get over these hurdles placed in our path. And this is not meant to amuse you. This is for all those who have questions but are afraid to ask. I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. No. When times get hard, you lose your way. Open your mind and hear what I say. This is a message for the hard and the soft. To those who tune in weekly and to those who keep an eye out for 8 p.m. on Sundays and turn their radios off. The truth hurts. The cloth has been pulled. We're walking around half dead. Use this show as your IV. Alive and Free is a new movement. We've achieved self-destruction. A street soldier promotes self-improvement. Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah. Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah.
All right, hour number 2, Alive and Free, Street Soldiers Radio. Wow, what a first hour, what a first hour, what a first hour. I gotta take a breath. And I didn't have no time to break. I didn't have a drink. I barely had to take a sip. Let me take one more sip, everybody. We'll get into it. preventing gun violence, a topic that is, I even hate to say hot right now. I'll say important right now, but it's always important given the release of the Surgeon General's report on gun violence, specifically gun violence as a public health issue. Our first hour, we were joined by Garen Wintemute, who this is his thing. He knows his stuff inside. What's it? Inside out, backwards and forwards. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to continue that conversation. I love the caller. He gave asked a question that's a lot on people's minds. Mike chimed also in with a couple things. And we're joined this hour by Dr. Julie Parsonette. And wait a minute, I got it. Hold on. Where's your name? I wrote it down. Okay, I did. I think I wrote it down. Dean Winslow. Dean Winslow joined. And Mike, that's my baby girl up there, all the way from Seattle, Davita Briscoe. And we're going to continue this conversation about what we can do to prevent gun violence. And for me, in a society where everybody's got a gun, so it's tough. Garen, I really like your last comment when I talked about how the one industry that we seem to take on, regardless of the money. I think those are very good comments that we can bring up regardless of the money, was the tobacco industry, which made a bunch of money. But seemed like the health issues took over. And, today, tobacco is persona non grata pretty much, in public buildings. I mean, we've done a lot to, and people are so aware that literally they don't let people smoke around them because, in their minds, it can cause a whole bunch of disease. It's a health thing for them. And I guess the tobacco industry has lost money, but that is secondary. You were quick to point out, you're very good to point out that, in fact, I want you to say those reasons again one more time for, I don't know if the Vita or Julie and Dean got to hear it, the reasons that we were successful in your mind with tobacco that seems to be absent from this discussion about firearms.
Sure. So very quickly, one is that unlike firearms, tobacco makes people sick and they stay sick for a long time. They bear those consequences. People around them see that. They get cancer, they get lung disease. But I think more importantly, the health effects of tobacco are spread across the population. The health effects of firearms, if we're talking about interpersonal violence, are not spread across the population. And lots of the population in the United States wrongly thinks it's not my problem because interpersonal violence happens to those people and I don't care about those people. But the other one, the one we sort of ended the first hour on, was the rhetorical question, have you ever heard of the National Smokers Association? And the answer is no. There isn't a powerful lobby of smokers carrying water for the industry to keep the product moving.
That is powerful, all three. Let me go back to the middle one. It doesn't happen to everybody. And tobacco, the effects of tobacco and disease was spread across the population, right? Whether you're Black, you smoke, you're white, you smoke, you're Asian, you smoke, you're going to get it. It's it. There's no protection because of your ethnicity, right? And there was a perception for a long time. Davita's having some problem with her, but you got it. Okay. For a long time, I used to hear that it happens. Even now, they talk about Chicago, and this is 2024, right? Like it's isolated, or it's worse in places like that, or I don't know if they think they deserve to die or whatever. However, when Columbine happened, and all these other places, that, and what I always heard, I never thought it would happen here. I never thought it would happen here. I never thought it would happen. And so when it happened, and then Florida and Uvalde, and then of course the terrible one in Newtown, is people still think that it might not happen here because it is happening in those places where you didn't think it would happen.
Yeah. So mass shootings, we all know this, it's worth reminding ourselves, account for about 1% of deaths from firearm violence. And as you said, Dr. Marshall, the way I frame it is mass shootings pretty much only happen in it can't happen here kinds of places. But the big thing we should talk about is suicide.
Yeah.
When people think about firearm violence, they tend to think about homicide and assault.
Yes.
But 60% basically of gun deaths are suicides. What I'm waiting for is not, as we had in the last hour, a caller saying, well, what about Chicago, the homicide capital? I'm waiting for somebody to say on a show like this, what about the Rocky Mountain states, the suicide capital of the United States? What are we going to do about gun violence in Montana and Idaho and Wyoming and Colorado, New Mexico and Arizona? And the fact is that a lot of people in those states are working really hard, but one of the impediments they face is nobody's willing to talk about suicide. Everybody wants to just sweep it under the carpet.
So that's information that's new to me. These suicide capitals or hotspots are what states? See, that's the kind of tracking we don't get. Would you just say that again? Because
sure. And let me mention, it's in the report, part of the good service the report provided. So suicide rates tend to be highest in the Rocky Mountain states, the Continental Divide states, from New Mexico to Alaska.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And it's because it's not the mountains, they're rural states with a tradition of firearm ownership. They on balance don't have they certainly don't have the homicide rates that states in the South do, but they have sky high suicide rates.
Wow. Before we go to both Julie Dean and get Davida back in here, I've heard red states, blue states, and it's worsened, but how does that data play out with regard to firearm violence, the gun violence? Let's throw it all out there on the table.
I'm going to oversimplify, but blue states, there's a lot of mix in the middle because there's a lot of purple, but blue states tend to be the states that have regulated firearms most robustly. California, Hawaii, New England. And those are the states with by far the lowest firearm death rates. There are 6 states with rates lower than ours. And I bragged about California earlier. There are 6 states with rates lower than ours. They are all blue states, and they have all done at least as much, if not more, as California has to regulate firearms. Regulation works.
Garen, all those, I'm coming. I know you're ready to jump in. All those places where everybody's got a gun. I'm talking Texas and, and Arizona and all those places. They not, where everybody's, thank you. You said, I think it's implied there. They dying by firearms there. They significantly. Okay, let's get a little reflection on it. And then my 2 guests right here. And you guys are related, right?
We're married.
That's what I thought, but I don't want to say. I didn't want to mess up. I thought you said that on your call. Thank you both for joining us. What are your thoughts, just from what you've heard? First of all, both of you, tell us what you do, and let's just join the conversation. Go right ahead.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Dean Winslow. I always tell the students it's the Dean is a name. It's just a first name, not a title. But anyway, I'm a professor of medicine at Stanford and former United States Air Force flight surgeon. I served 35 years in the Air Force and deployed 6 times to Iraq and Afghanistan. And I've actually qualified, as an expert marksman in both the M4, M16 rifle and the M9 pistol, on many occasions. So, again, these are kind of tools that I'm real familiar with. And again, I'll turn it over to Julie to talk a little bit about her background. Then I had actually a couple of quick comments about some of the questions you asked Dr. Wintemute.
So hi, I'm Julie Parsonet, and I'm a professor of medicine also at Stanford. And I'm the president of Scrubs Addressing the Firearms Epidemic, which is a group that's in 70 medical schools around the country and also has as other interested physicians and healthcare providers around the country. And our aim is to help teach physicians how to talk to their patients to help reduce firearms injuries and deaths. And I have to say that we've learned a lot from Dr. Wintemute, who's really one of our
he's on the
rock
ball.
star.
He is.
And
ball.
so I think a lot of what we've learned and that we know comes from all the research that he's done and what he's done for the state of California. I think we should be all really grateful to him.
Well, let me just say this. I think everybody on this show really wants the violence to stop, right? I mean, that's just it. We don't, I'm tired of burying people, and I cited 5 stories early from personal, to that. So yes, I applaud all of you that really, dying is not what we're supposed to be doing by gun violence, right? So, you go ahead and make any.
I have a few comments just on what Dr. Wintemute said, and also on, first of all, I want to thank you for this show and thank you for doing this and to be fighting violence in general. We really admire all the work that you do and very grateful for you getting this out to everybody and speaking out and having these wonderful guests like Dr. Wintemute. And I want to make 2 comments about some of the stuff I heard from when you were talking about cigarettes. I love that analogy with cigarettes, that, cigarettes have gone from being something that everybody thought was really glamorous and wonderful to something that is now, is people disdain smokers and you can't smoke anywhere. And
they disdain smoking. They disdain smoking.
Smoking, that's right. Smoking, you're absolutely right. And so that cultural change, I think, is something that would be really wonderful for guns, because I think people kind of think of them as toys and things that aren't dangerous, but they're really a lethal weapon. And we'd like to see that they're not just handled like they're nothing and left around on the dining room table and in the closet and the drawers where children can get them and all those things. They're not nothing. They're a lethal weapon. But I think the other thing that I know Dr. Wintemute also knows a lot about is one of the big problems, that differences between cigarettes and guns, is the cigarette industry was sued. And they lost a huge amount of money because people said, these are dangerous things and you're not making them safe for people to use. And we're going to sue you. And that made a huge difference in ending cigarette smoking. But gun violence, we are not allowed to sue them. There was a law during the Bush administration, Bush Jr., that said that you're not allowed to sue gun manufacturers for how their products are manufactured. But they could be manufactured so much safer, and they can be made in ways that these sorts of things wouldn't happen. Especially accidental shootings wouldn't happen, and gun thefts would be unsuccessful, for instance, because they would have a trigger identification. Lots of things that gun manufacturers could do to reduce theft, to reduce injuries, and we can't sue them. We could sue people who make squirt guns if they're manufactured badly and a child gets injured by it, but we can't sue a gun manufacturer.
Wait. You could sue the maker of a squirt gun that squirts, I assume, water.
Yeah.
That if it not manufactured, whatever, correctly, but you can't sue the makers of firearms with bullets in them, a whole bunch of bullets in them, that kill people and put people in the grave and cause untold damage. And that's because
because of the NRA.
Oh, okay.
The NRA pushed it through, and it was passed by Congress, and we're not allowed to sue them for defects in their products. And defects could be considered making the trigger so easy that a 2-year-old can pull it.
Wow. Oh my, wow. Boy, I take a deep breath on that. I saw Lady E's face, and it's like, I mean, sometimes I don't get this place. Well, a lot of times I don't get this place. Not just that. Thank you for that clarification. There was no National Smokers Association, and there is the NRA, which, like, no, you can't sue us, right? So that's that. Yeah. The will is not there yet. The will is not there for a lot of reasons. Thank you for making that point.
And Dean, I think, had some comments too.
Yeah, so first one, sir, is about, again, Dr. Wintemut, mentioned that overall, blue states, have lower homicide rates, than red states. But the everyone, particularly, that are, hugely pro Second Amendment, they always say, well, what about all the murders in Chicago? Well, again, I was actually born in the Midwest. My mom and dad are both from Indiana. And even though Illinois has very strict regulations about guns and waiting periods, things like that. The thing is that if you know where Chicago is, you just drive 15 minutes east and you're in Indiana, and you can buy a gun there with absolutely no restrictions. So my bet is probably 90% of the guns, that are used in gang shootings in Chicago were probably bought in Indiana. And so, one thing that I feel real strongly about is that we need national standards of regulation about, waiting periods. And again, one of my big things, just as a pilot, for now more than 50 years, is like, in order for me to fly even a small single engine airplane, I have to study, pass written tests, fly numerous hours, take a check ride with an instructor, and do that every 2 years, take a physical exam every 2 years. And I don't consider that a violation of my rights. I consider that, appropriate training, in order to be able to safely exercise, being a pilot. And of course, a gun has much more lethal potential than a single engine airplane. But yet, again, originally, back when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, the National Rifle Association was really into firearms safety, firearms training, but now that's considered almost, anathema to the Second Amendment, that's a barrier that you're putting in place. But again, I think, in an ideal world, we would have not, basically getting rid of the Second Amendment, but just, national standards for training, certification, for, owning and operating a firearm. Even just making it even half as hard as getting a driver's license, I think would really be helpful. Then the other thing that really strikes close to home to me is the relationship with firearms and suicide. And again, as Dr. Wintemut pointed out, that close to 2/3 of the deaths in the U.S. from firearms are from suicide. And particularly as a veteran, that the veterans actually choose firearms probably 95% of the time, to kill themselves. And again, we have very weak systems in place to basically be able to just even short term, take firearms away from people that are suffering from mental health crises and things like that. So I think that's something else that I think there's a huge amount of support, even by people that own guns, for doing that. So I'm really hoping that, over the next few years, we're able to make some progress in those areas. So.
I've heard that. Is that just in my ears, Ann? Huh? Yeah, I can hear it. Well, I don't know if you can hear that. Do you hear noise running through? It's just me. Okay. I will soldier through because I got two things going on in my head. There's an argument about every time I hear somebody, there was a mass shooting, or they always say the person had mental health issues, right? They have mental health issues. However, even if they're concerned about, guns and mental health, they're not regulating that either. I mean, they're not trying to screen any people for some kind of mental health, concern they may have. Mm-hmm. It seems like to me now anybody, like I said, it's gone from, now anybody can get a gun. What's the current state? Now I say state, I don't mean state, S-T-A-T-E, the states, but it seems now the move is to, if you're 18 and you want a gun, you can just walk in there and get one. Is there any, check on who can get it, who can't get it? I mean, I know you get the legal thing log out, but so it seems like we're moving to like everybody can have one just because they want one. Is that where we're going now?
Garen, why don't you take that? Yeah, I think.
All right. Okay. So the situation is changing and for the better. It used to be that in most of the country, there were basically two systems of commerce in firearms. And we're moving to a point, I hope, where there's just one. So let me describe it. If you buy from a licensed retailer, you have to go through a background check. It's usually completed in just a few minutes, but there are some screens in place. They're porous as all get out. Lots of prohibited people sneak through, but under the law, you can't buy a gun anywhere in the country if you have been convicted of a felony, if you've been convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor, if you are, and there's some more like this.
Yeah.
It was the case that you could just, in most of the country, not California, go, let's say, to a gun show in Indianapolis. It was a favorite place for me to visit when I was doing a gun show study. And you could just, but it's not just Indiana, Arizona, pretty much Georgia. You could walk up to a private party who was selling a gun and just agree on the price for the gun. Cash moves one way, the gun moves the other. There's a handshake. There's always a handshake. There are people who set up tables and have dozens, hundreds of guns for sale, but they say they're just private parties. But now the Biden administration has rules in place. They just went into place in May that say that if you are engaged in the business, and a key point for insiders is they've defined engaged in the business. If you're engaged in the business of selling guns, you have to have a license and all the rules apply. So I think over time, it's going to be harder to do that cash for a handshake, undocumented, unrecorded purchase thing. We'll have to see what happens. I'm sure that new policy will be challenged in court. And with this Supreme Court, anything goes.
What's the age now? 18?
Yes.
You know, that when you can get a gun, you're an adult, you can get a gun at 18 if you pass the background check. And
yes,
go ahead.
I do want to comment though on the mental health issue. A lot of these mass shooters do not have mental health issues.
I know that.
So even if the mental health restrictions would not really apply to them, and people who have mental health are much more likely to be the victims of gun violence than actually to perpetrate gun violence. So, but I want, and although I totally agree that the laws that are going into place and the regulations that the Biden administration had put in are fantastic. There are so many guns in the United States, and there are ghost guns, and there are people who give guns to their family members, which you're allowed to do without any without going through a firearms. Isn't that right? You can go without to a family member. I think you can give it without.
It depends on the state.
California, I think you can't actually.
Correct.
But there's a lot of guns get passed around. There's a lot of gun trafficking, and there's a lot of ghost guns out there. And with all. The estimate is there are 400 million guns in the United States, but that's considered to be a very gross underestimate of the number of guns. And it's easy to get one. Even with these laws, I think if you want to get a gun, you're going to be able to get it.
Oh yeah. And again, there's a hierarchy for me. I mean, I'm not a gun guy, so I'm just not a gun guy. I mean, I might kill you. I don't want to kill anybody, right? Because I don't want somebody's blood on my hands, and I don't want to apologize to somebody's family. Okay. That's really what it is. I don't want to make an enemy. It doesn't work. No matter how much you say, I'm sorry, it really, really, really doesn't work. And I'm into alive and free. Right. But it just boggles my mind. The big guns. I just can't get over why can't they say you can't have an AK-4? Oh, I know the Second Amendment, but you have what do they need? How many deer can you kill? I mean, what is it about these AK-47s and Uzis? And I mean, what do you need that for? Seriously.
Well, we have a good story about that. So I'm going to ask Dean to tell you that story.
Yeah. So I agree with you completely. But again, it's not with the NRA, it's not a popular stand to take. But again, I carried an M4 or an M16 rifle. Anytime I went outside the wire, in Iraq or Afghanistan. So to me, those are tools, and I'm glad that I had those. But by the way, in the military, you actually have to lock up your gun, in an armory every night. You're not allowed to keep it in your dorm room, at least back in the United States. But anyway, so back in 2017, I was nominated by President Donald Trump to serve as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. and working for Secretary Jim Mattis. And again, when my confirmation hearing came around in November of 2017, actually Julie and I were teaching over at Oxford, and I took a red eye that night, and I was a little bit tired when I arrived for my Senate hearing. And again, Senator McCain was still alive then, head of the Armed Services Committee, and he basically grilled me about a number of things, and then a number of senators asked questions, and one of them actually came from one of the Democratic senators from New Hampshire. And this was actually the day after the horrendous mass shooting at a Baptist church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, where a discharged Air Force airman used an AR-15 rifle to kill 26 people at this Baptist church. And I was pretty horrified that happened. But anyway, it was interesting that the Democratic senator actually started grilling me and said, well, Dr. Winslow, or Colonel Winslow, I think she called me, what are you going to do to prevent this from happening? And I, because he received a bad conduct rather than a dishonorable discharge. And I said, well, ma'am, that's really not a medical issue. That's a JAG issue, a Judge Advocate General issue. And and then she said, well, I don't think that's a good answer. So I said, well, if I am confirmed for this position by the Senate, I would certainly recommend to Secretary Mattis that he convene an IG inspection to look into root causes. And she said, well, I don't think that's an adequate answer either. And then, of course, at that point, I was, pretty tired, and I kind of lost my temper a little bit. And I said, well, honestly, ma'am, as an Air Force flight surgeon, I investigated numerous fatal aircraft mishaps, and every mishap that I investigated, there was a whole chain of events that led up to the mishap. And if you'd interrupted any single link in the chain, that the mishap would not have occurred. So if you look at what happened yesterday at that church in Texas, the first obvious link in that chain is like, why do we allow civilians unrestricted access to military assault weapons? And of course, at that point, Senator McCain, who actually, took a lot of money from the NRA, slammed the podium, and he said, "That's not your area of responsibility or authority, doctor." So basically that kind of shut me down. But that was a little bit of the impetus for us starting SAFE, Scrubs Addressing the Firearms Epidemic.
It didn't just shut him down; they canceled his appointment.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah,
canceled his appointment. They went on, that was the end. You could not say anything about gun restrictions to the federal government at that, and still can't in a lot of things. They will just, that was the third rail that he stepped on. You could not say something about restricting weapons. And so when you asked about why do we have these, it's because there's people out there who, think it's fine.
It's not fine. DeVita Briscoe, let me come to you. You were on the ground. This is an issue for you. It's a personal issue for you, like it is for me. And, you are Seattle as a, doing something about gun violence. What do you, jump in and say whatever you want to say, girl, baby, because,
well, can you hear me first? Because I had to, okay. Yes. There's so many things I want to
tell people who you are first. Address.
Okay. DeVita Briscoe. I'm from Seattle. Well, I'm Seattle. You guys know Seattle, Washington. I've been appointed by Mayor Bruce Harrell to serve him as his strategic advisor. That's my technical classifications title, but to serve as the gun violence prevention liaison. And this is the first time this position has ever been created. So it's a cabinet level position that he promised to create in his campaign. So I was appointed to serve in that role, and mostly because of my leadership on gun violence prevention, which I kind of got into from a personal tragedy, losing my 17-year-old son to gun violence. And so I've done a lot of advocacy work around that. And then also losing my brother to police violence. So that work around police reform, I was invited in a lot of spaces on public safety. And so that's what led me to the mayor's office. So here I am now. So there was a few things just from the conversations I was listening to about the lobbying power of the NRA. that has put a a real wedge in what we're able to accomplish around gun violence prevention. Number one, there's been a federal ban for I don't know how long, decades, on research. So if you're looking at any public health problem, I don't care if it's traffic deaths, I don't care if it's smoking, I don't care if it's measles, mumps, whatever you call it, any public health crisis, there has always been research. And what research does is it leads to solutions. Well, the NRA has pretty much strong-armed Congress, and there's a federal ban on research. And so that's been the key thing that has been the prohibited our success in trying to address gun violence in our country. So that's been the key thing. Yeah. Somebody said something else about mental health. You can always, some of the laws right now, the 10-day waiting period, that is so that, which is what the federal government has the Biden administration has tried to address, is like raising the minimum age from 18 to 21. So now you have to be older to purchase a firearm. It was a time where you couldn't at 18. There was a video that I saw. He couldn't go in to buy sexually explicit videos. He couldn't buy, the 18-year-old. He couldn't buy cigarettes. He couldn't get a lottery ticket. They did this whole study, this video, and they followed this young man to each store where he was trying to purchase something at the age of 18. And then he walked into a gun show and bought a bunch of guns with no background check, no nothing. And so now they have started to pass background checks. The 10-day waiting period is if you're in a fight or a dispute and you just want to go purchase a gun to go kill somebody, now you got to wait 10 days to cool off. So these are some of the laws that they tried to pass, because we already know what's causing a lot of the violence is accessibility to firearms. Yep. And so for our people, which I talk a lot about community violence, which is street violence or gun violence, there's 4 types. There's the suicide, there's mass shootings, school shootings, and then there's community violence. And the community violence is what we're most concerned with, you and I. Most of us are. And most of the people who fall in that category of getting killed are black young men between the ages of 18 and 24. We're only 14% of the population, but we account for 60% of the firearms in this country. In the last, actually, more people have been killed, more Black Americans have been killed from community gun violence than all the years of lynching. That's how many people that we are losing to this epidemic. And so one of the things that I wanted to address is how many people we are losing to urban gun violence. With urban gun violence, street violence, gang violence, youth violence, community violence, you kind of use those words all interchangeably. But it all kind of means the same thing. It's young people who are engaged in disputes, insults, arguments, disrespect, right? Just kind of petty, and then alcohol, guns, like there's different things that drive or escalate those incidents that occur that cause just a confrontation to become deadly or lethal. And again, the accessibility to firearms. We passed here in Washington, we passed background check laws. We got the ghost gun law. We banned assault weapons. We have ERPOs, extreme risk protection orders. We got a whole unit that we fund to go and get the firearms from people. And our kids are still accessing these weapons, high-powered weapons. We banned 10 capacity magazines. We banned all this stuff. And these kids are getting these guns. So now I'm finding out that they're making them with 3D printers. And now they got access to switches, which can switch a Glock, a handgun, to a semi-automatic weapon. And the trend now is, if you got a handgun, that's not popular anymore. What's popular is to have the assault weapons with the clips. So, and the switches is the biggest thing right now. And so it's crazy, but that's what's happening. And there's no regulation on how they can get the 3D printers. There's no regulations on how they get the ghost gun kits. They can just call in and just order them and make them. So anyway, so yes, so there's a ton of things I have to say. So Massachusetts has like the lowest gun violence. Their rate is pretty low. And Massachusetts has the lowest gun violence rates because of two things. Because of the laws that they've passed, the policies that they've passed around restricting access to firearms. The second thing that they've done, they make the largest investment in what we call community violence intervention. And so that's, again, where this public health approach to gun violence is where we are investing in community-led safety. And that's where we're not trying to take over what law enforcement is doing, but it's just a complement to what law enforcement is doing. And so it's investment in community-led safety, where it's violence interruption, what we call credible messengers. These are people who have street knowledge or who have some former experience and a reputation. And what they do is they're trying to mediate conflict or trying to stop a retaliation. Is what we know about community violence is that about 75% of it is retaliatory. And so some of the best practices around that is the community violence intervention, the violence interruption work. There's also hospital-based intervention now, which is where we're trying to stop a victim from becoming a perpetrator. And that started from an 8-year-old kid who came into the hospital 8 times. First time he was some type of assault. Second time it was like all the way from 8 to 16. It was another stabbing, and then it was he got shot, and then it was like 5 times he had went to this hospital, and then the last time he was twice he was shot. The first time he survived, and the second time he died. So hospital-based intervention started from this 8-year-old kid, and they said, we were able to patch up his wounds, but we weren't able to address the disease of violence that was in this young person. And so that's where hospital-based intervention started, which is the best practice. So cities are investing in hospital-based intervention. They're investing in community violence intervention. They're passing policies to try to restrict the access to firearms. So there's a multiplicity of things that are happening, but there's no one strategy that's going to prevent it completely. It's kind of like when we say a public health approach, we're thinking of one thing on top of another, and everybody having a piece of prevention and trying to stop this cycle of violence and addressing the disease of violence. I'll stop there if you have any more questions.
And let me just add, our work with you, comes from, in addition to that, is trying to get people not to think violence is an answer in the first place, right? To not the mindset to me is because if you get the mindset, then nobody's going to want to go there, right? And that to me is like I want. It's like doc. That's why we have, health prevention is the biggest thing because you don't want people to get sick in the first place, right? I mean, really, you're doctors. You don't want people sick. I really didn't want my mother was treated for cancer, but I prefer that she not got it. My father had diabetes, so I prefer that I got it. So if we can get people to think that violence is not an option, not to get in, and she knows what we call it the disease of violence, the mindset. The disease, and they get infected. They get infected. And I always talk about this. I look at this computer here, and I always say, "What's the worst thing that can happen to it?" And everybody said, "Get a virus," because once it gets this virus, there's nothing they can do. Right? There's nothing they can do. It can't do, and it's not, you. And I said, "What do you do when it gets virus?" Well, you call somebody to come and get rid of the virus. You don't throw, throw the anyway, and then or you put virus defender on a computer, so it won't get it in the first place. And the reason they feel that way, they see it as something a valuable piece of machinery. I mean, this thing is valuable, right? Well, then I said, what do we do with people who are infected with the disease of violence, right? They said, well, we put them We send them to jail with a whole bunch of other people also infected with the disease, and they come out more infected. And if you get treated in there, it's only because you bumped into a guy, you know, an elder in there that's like, look, you know, this ain't working for you, and you get to your sense. So in addition to all those things, I want us to move to having conversations with young people about violence is not the way of, it's not a way of life, right? And you know, there's a, you know, she knows we got a whole set of risk factors and all of those things. And I say the mindset is triply important now, given the fact that, you know, everybody can get a gun, right? I mean, everybody can get a gun. So most important is what's going on up here. And I mean, after our conversations, I'm not getting in a gang. You know, I'm not going to do that, because you know, what's one of our favorite rules for living? A friend will never lead you to danger, right? Love will never lead you to danger. Family never leads you to danger. So they realize gangs are dangerous, so they don't want danger. I mean, it's all those things that if you get in people's heads. Now, I know that the world is not into this. They're not into keeping people alive and free. They're into, you know, violence makes money, right? Violence makes money, and so I'm just hoping that we take it on. As long as we take it on, I just don't see a point that right now, and I don't. If the suicide, I mean, you just want kids to die. I mean, what do you want to do? You just want to just let them continue to blow their brains out. We're not at that point yet for a lot of reasons. And maybe this Surgeon General's report will move us further along that road, because again, Davida, you know, our number one rule for living is there's nothing more valuable than an individual's life, right? And so that's where we start. But we're not there. I mean, we're not even close with this gun thing. I mean, we put an instrument of death in people's hands. And let me just throw another thing. You and I do this a lot. We regulate the police. we're at, you know, they can kill people, and they got guns, right? And that's what they do. So there's been a move, you know, in certain cities. I know we're down out here. I was on the police commission, you know, this for 14 years. And we in there, we wrote a use of force policy. We regulate when they can pull it, how long they can pull back before you pull a gun. You know, we're doing it because they got weapons that kill people, right? And you know, we are doing that in this sliver of things, but we're just not doing it with the general population. So I think we got to get to the point where, you know, we got to say we want people to live. And you know, this argument that, you know, guns don't kill people, people do. Well, they're using guns, okay? That's why we got a problem with gun violence. We don't just have specifically, it's been named that way. And I don't know. I
just have one. This is what I really love about the Alive and Free prescription, and the way that you frame it as violence being a social disease, and you know how we pass this down from generation to generation. We pass down wrong information, and so I think I 100% agree, because I was caught up in I was infected with the disease of violence. So was my whole family, and what I think is, in addition to the community violence intervention work, it's really just stopping that immediate retaliation or mediate that conflict. The behavioral change is the part that's most important, and addressing the norms, right? The value system of in the hood, we don't snitch. You know, we carry a gun for protection. We got to be down for our homeboys, right or wrong. That whole thinking.
He disrespected me. She disrespected me, right? What? You couldn't be disrespected
me.
Then you would have a problem.
or you know, you can't be a punk. You know,
right? All that stuff.
As for our Black boys, you know, they have misguided ideas about manhood. You know, and the gun being a status symbol. You know, it's a subculture of American culture. In American culture, women are disvalued. In American culture, we look at, remember there was the old cowboys and shooting with the gun, you know, so it's just the subculture has adopted the same value system. That's all the negative things that drive violence or perpetuate violence, or say that solving a problem with violence is the answer. So it's addressing those cultural norms and us saying those norms are wrong. What you were taught or is the wrong way of thinking. And so that's what I like about the Alive and Free prescription is it's resisting that disease.
You've heard me say this. I told this blood in Los Angeles. I'll never forget this. And they had this thing, they're gang truces, right? Gang truces. And I would tell them, what do you need a truce for? You're not enemies. You've decided you were enemies. And I said, well, what makes you an enemy? Well, he's a Crip and I'm a Blood. Well, I said, I got the solution to that. Just don't be a Blood. You won't have a problem, right? Your last name is Briscoe. So if we don't have a problem, my name is Marshall. We don't have a problem. Now, if you become, you get into a gang and I didn't think we automatically got a problem. So I remember telling him that. And he was like, well, why don't you just go back and tell your homeboys, don't be in a gang. Don't be a Blood. He was like, Dr. Marshall, they'll laugh at me. I cut him off because what he was telling me was that he was more concerned about his status than he was about the life of the people he said he had love for. I'm not saying you really don't. And then he said, well, we can't change till society changes. I said, well, you don't have a whole lot of dead homeboys if you're waiting for society to change, because that's the way they've been doing things around here for a long time. So if you're waiting for them to change, you might as well just go take the gun and shoot them yourself, right? So I've heard that yes, we've inherited this way of doing and looking at things. I mean, I always say America's was born in violence, with slavery and all of that. And so, yeah. All right, jump in, Julie. I'm sorry.
No, I'm so inspired by actually what Davida was talking about. I think she's really right, exactly on target from my own understanding, although I haven't lived that experience personally. But I am an infectious disease doctor. That's what I do for a living. And we just got through this pandemic where we spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars, right? Just a huge amount of money on stemming this infectious disease. And we spend nothing on trying to figure out how to stem a leading cause of death in children, and definitely one of the top leading causes of death in Black men. And it's a travesty, actually, a social justice travesty that we don't spend, that we have this infectious disease. You both have mentioned it. It is an infectious disease. It is something that we see networks of this going from one person to the other.
And in communities, yeah.
And in communities, and we do nothing. I mean, we really have done very little. And Davida mentioned the research issue. We actually can do research now because they lifted that law, the Dickey Amendment, but there's not much money in it. I mean, they've put more than they ever have in the past. But if we really want to address this, like we addressed COVID, it's going to take some real money and some real effort. Those community trauma prevention programs, they are very labor intensive. They take a lot of people, a lot of well-trained people who are going out into the community, meeting those kids, working in the hospitals, working in the emergency rooms. They work really well, but the investment has to be there to make them work. And we need to push for that. We need to push for more money.
Oh, I wanted to also say that they have passed. We passed a law where we can sue gun manufacturers. So Everytown for Gun Safety is. I think they just filed a lawsuit against Glock for that switch because that switch is responsible for. I don't know how many. Now they can. We just had one shooting. It was 120 shell casings. It was 8 or 9 guns at one time. Every single shooting is 80 to 90 shell casings on the ground. Like it's insane. I can't even explain it. It's not just handguns anymore. It's these high capacity magazine weapons that they're using, which is now the trend. So now we're able to sue gun manufacturers. And Everytown has led that charge.
The suits that have been successful, the one that Sandy Hook just did, they're against the advertising. You're allowed to sue them on how they advertise. And so the Sandy Hook one that they just won, they won close to $100 million, was the way they advertised. And I think that's the way that Everytown is also doing it, is that they're going against the way they the way they advertise Switch to make it into something that's really fun, right? Instead of what it really is. So it's a very smart It's very smart.
Life should not be political, but it is, unfortunately.
I was going to just jump in also. I actually care for children and infants. I'm actually a professor of pediatrics as well as medicine. And just as a parent and grandparent, I just find it appalling that guns are now the leading cause of death in children in the United States of America. We're the richest country in the world. I just think that's not something that we should be proud of. And again, that's one of the things that just in a small way, our organization's trying to do is, teach doctors and other health professionals, how to talk to parents about, safe storage of guns and some of the issues that, that both of you have addressed as well. So, and it's insufficient, but at least it's a start. So.
And you see how much money they didn't put into the fentanyl crisis and how much money they didn't put into COVID, but it's nowhere near. It's a fraction of the cost of how they're addressing urban gun violence. And that's what you said, because the population that's being killed is not on America's agenda.
No, sadly.
I just so much this is going through me because I really want people to stay alive and free. I mean, to be alive, unharmed by violence, and free from incarceration. And I know people ask me all the time, what's your biggest challenge? And I said, not everybody wants people to stay alive and free. Arms trafficking makes money for people. Human trafficking makes money for people, right? What's the other? Drug trafficking makes money for people. I'm up against money. I'm up against, the history of violence and so on. And so, but I love those of you who do want to keep people alive and free, who do want to stop the violence, who gets it, whether it's not, and I learned this early a long time ago, whether it's not your family, it doesn't matter if it's your family. It could be your family. It could be, you feel for everybody, it doesn't have to, a lot of people say, I never understood until it happened to me. Well, no, you're supposed to understand, everybody has family. Everybody has loved ones. And we're not there yet. I don't know how much the Surgeon General's report will help, but if it's step, it can't hurt. Let's put it like that, right? It can't hurt. It's got us talking. Maybe it will move. There's a group. There's the political group, and I don't spend much time with them because I don't. But I spend a lot of time with individuals, with people, and whether or not they move or not, I know I can get somebody. Not even. I got people who don't carry guns. They just said no. It's a risk factor. They actually look like carrying a gun as a risk factor. It puts more of a target on me because when I got it in my hand, I'm gonna think differently. I'm actually gonna think differently. I'm not gonna talk. I might talk the first time. I'm gonna talk. But when it controls your thinking, and a lot of them carry cause of fear. So I help them deal with the fear because it's the fear that drives what they do. Those are all those things that you can do with individuals, and that whether these people get it or not, that I know and that have saved individual lives. And so we're all working for the same thing. And I really want to thank you for being in this. We send a lot of people to college, and I always say this: the scream that I hear at the college graduation is very different than the scream I hear at the funeral, than the wail I hear at the funeral, and that's worth it for me. That's definitely worth it for me. Any last words for each of you before I bring on Lady E, and she always takes us home. So, Garen, Julie.
So very quickly, something Davida said I want to emphasize. People ask all the time, what's the one thing we've got to do to solve this problem? And the answer, as Davida said, the right thing to do is a lot of things at the same time. It's a complex problem. There are lots of things to do. Lots of them are in that report. And as we talked about, I do think the report will make a difference.
It's great to hear.
I had one final thing. I support everything that you just said. And you actually said something about speaking with weapons. We have let the Second Amendment defeat the First Amendment. so that we are saying that guns speak louder than words. And people don't know how to express their feelings, and they express themselves with a gun, and they suppress what other people say. We need to teach people how to speak in a way that they don't need to speak with violence, and to make sure that they have a voice. And the more voice we give people, I think the less they'll feel the need to have to express it using weapons.
Dean?
Agree. Yeah, completely.
You know, a couple of doctors, and what a great couple. And you work at Stanford. And my daughter went to Stanford, so you are just the greatest people ever.
Yeah.
I always say that's the biggest check I ever wrote.
Well, we're also fans of UC Davis, I just want to say.
We are, yeah.
But let me say, she loves Stanford. She loves it. She's probably watching now. Yeah, that's my school. And
we were resident fellows at Stanford for 4 years, you know, so we were dorm parents, lived in the dorm for 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And Davida, you know how I feel about you, baby girl. I seen you just rise through it all from that personal tragedy, you know, to wanting to help others not go through that personal tragedy. So, you know, I can't say enough about you. You know, I love you. And the 4 Davidas that she has 4. All of them look like her. Lady E, you are Lady E for a reason. So,
well, not tonight. Not tonight. I am still paralyzed by the idea of an 8-year-old boy who went to the hospital for 8 years and ultimately didn't leave after 16. And his visits weren't field trips like, you know, you take kids on a field trip to see, you know, what you want to be when you grow up. And what that must have done to him every year, that idea that he's not going to make it. I'm just paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't imagine. Every year, it was something. And then the gunshots, and then one he just didn't survive. I think that that's something that we really need to think about. And typically I have something to say, but this has been like a scary movie to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't do scary movies, especially after the sun goes down.
Yeah.
And this whole conversation, access, availability, the lack of value is insignificant. The demand for power or just anger turned inside out have to do something. All the things that young people are doing and experiencing, and then the time and effort and energy that's spent in one direction and so little being given and provided for the lives of those who are not valued. How do you let people know that they are when what they see and experience shows them something otherwise? It's just heartbreaking. And it just continues. And so, Davida, I along with Dr. Marshall, have seen you flourish and grow. And the fact that this ministry that you have to make a difference for the lives of young people, to stand up for what it's going to take to value your life when you are surrounded by a system and systems that do not. The strength and courage and power that it takes to value yourself when you are surrounded by systems that do not. And then Doctors Winslow and Dr. Winterman, I don't know if I said that right. What you do for people, your work, your research, your caring, We definitely need all of that and more of that. I'm hoping and praying that people are listening. And like you said, Dean, to Davita, yes, let's put all those balls, throw them up in the air, and let's just get it rolling and working. Because indeed, there's nothing more valuable than an individual's life. This is Lady Estelle, whose heart is touched, asking you to remember this and consider this. Thank you.
Thank all of you. Thank you so much. We'll stay in touch. You know we do. We're in it for the long haul. All right. Good night. Get a good night's rest and let's get going tomorrow.